Working with the deformations in Harmony Essentials is wonderful and immensely frustrating all at the same time. So there's a couple of different things we need to keep in mind. So you can go read through the user guide and study that, or you can just dive in and start working with it. To work with the deformations, we need to select the rigging tool. When I select the rigging tool, this allows me to insert my starting point for this, and I just click. Now, as I click again, that's going to add in my first joint. If I click again, it adds in another joint. If I click again, it adds in the final bone. So this is now creating a rigging structure. The circle shows the area of influence. Well, I don't want to insert any more there. So this circle shows the influence of how this area is going to be affected when I choose to animate. And we'll see what difference happens as we work our way through. I'm going to, again, work with the rigging tool. And I will click, click again, and click again. So the bottom example here is a pencil line. The top is a painted path that has a fill on it. To animate these, I use the animation tool. And as I go to work with it, we'll see how it creates something that can bend. If I go to the other layer, same thing. If I am working with solid color areas, it works really well to use the pencil tool. Now the circle, the sphere of influence, helps us to see. Now if I go too far and it intersects the other one, we can see some awkwardness happening visually. If I pull that down, and that circle of influence on how it bends is keyframeable in the same way that everything else here is keyframeable. So these, if I look down in my layers, I will see that bones have been added. These are going to be my kinematic bones that allow me to control the movement, and they are all deforming or modifying my drawings. Bones active in here, it is often easier to then take my layers and collapse them down so I just see the primary keyframes for it. I am going to extend out my layers with F5 so that I can now start animating. Working with the top, the painted bone, I'm going to go into frame 1 and hit F6 for a starting keyframe. Now if I go out to frame 10, at this point I am going to modify my artwork or change it. So if I pull this up and pull this down, now you can see where it starts to create some weird creases in the artwork as it's changing shape. It's not as smooth as I would like. If I change that circle, we can see how it now, whoops. So now if I am pulling up here, I want to pull this over here, pull this point up, so I can see how it's possible to create animation and create that movement in the project. Now, modifying that circle changes how smooth or harsh that movement becomes. So I can create the motion, go out. Now it's also sometimes useful if I decide my next keyframe, hit F6, and then start adjusting my artwork. Up in my rigging tool area, I will see that I have an option to individually look at which bone I'm trying to modify, but I can also return a bone to its initial starting position or reset the keyframe. So the bone that is selected is the first bone in the chain right here. If I click on this point here, or this line right here, you see how it highlights the bone in white. That determines which is the active bone. So if I click on a bone and say reset to your original shape, we can see how it resets to its original position. And I can reset to original position, reset to original position. So now it's reset to the original position, but if I then slide this over, we see how we're able to start to create the inchworm effect. And you can see how the area of influence is growing or shrinking as it moves through. So that is keyframeable in the same way that the rotation and positioning of these elements is keyframeable. Take an artwork layer and attach it to a kinematic, or to a bone layer, is we are able to adjust it. So the first thing I want to do is to set the pivot point for that layer so that it's going to move where I want it to move from. Then with that layer selected, I will go in my new options and choose kinematic output. And that adds essentially a bone attachment point to this drawing layer. Now in my layer palette, if I take this and drag this down into my bone area, all right. Make it a child now. Now when I animate, it will animate. Now if I need to adjust the position of it, we can now adjust its position so that it's positioned where we need it to be. So with that position, now I can move to a new place in time, grab the animation tool, and animate that arm. But I also have the ability to take this hand and I can animate it. So the hand can animate separate from the arm, so the arm can move while the hand is animating. So we're able to attach drawing layers to artwork layers that have bones attached to them. And this works whether it's a pen layer or a painted layer. So I could do the same process where I can now make this a child of the other arm, or the painted arm as well, if I had a second hand to work with. Creating a second example. So with the foot layer here, take the foot, add a kinetic output to it, go to the leg. I'm going to go up to the rigging tool. I will click at the top of the leg. I'm going to click for the knee, and I will click for the ankle. Now if I go back into the foot, before I attach it, I'm going to move my rotation point for it. So this now gives me my neutral position for what we are working on. I'm just naming this layer so I can remember which one is which. So now if I take this kinetic output, drag it down so that it's part of the leg, so the foot is now a child of the leg. Now I am ready to start animating. So if I use the animation tool, I can rotate. We see how the whole leg moves. But I want to just use this as my opening frame. So I'm going to click F6 at that point. Go out to the end, F5 to extend out the artwork. Now go over a few frames, and with this I'm going to do a little rotation, and this is where it's nice, but we can see if we go too far we can start to get some weird bends happening. But maybe if I stretch out that sphere a little bit, go to the foot, rotate the foot. If I turn on onion skinning, I can see where I want to see where it used to be in frame 1, because now my goal is going to be to move it. Now you will notice it does not onion skinning. So with this, I'm going to just pull it up just a little bit. So then I'm getting a little bend. But I've decided I want more bend. Syncing with the knee. This means the foot needs to straighten, so the whole thing will have to locate over a little bit. We're getting bend, and now as with this, I'm going to rotate, grab the point. Now if you grab the line and don't grab appropriately, you will get and we're able to use bones as an animation tool. It's just one more element in your arsenal, the same way with cutout or frame by frame hand-drawn animation. All of these are just simple techniques. There's nothing one is better or more important than the other. They just give us a different way of generating the animation that we are striving for.